I'm here in Taipei, Taiwan, where the anti-CCP political party won the country's presidential elections. All eyes are now on Beijing, where the Chinese Communist Party has been threatening war if this political victory were to take place. The recent elections have been a blow to the CCP. The regime exhausted nearly all of its options to interfere with the elections. Military threats to strike fear into voters, trade pressure against farmers, propaganda videos targeting the nation's youth, and many other tactics. The main rival political party in Taiwan, the Kuomintang or KMT, was running a similar narrative to Beijing, saying the Taiwanese election was a choice between peace with China or war with China. Yet none of this was able to sway Taiwanese voters, either internally or externally. On election night, January 13th, my team and I were at the rally for the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, which won the elections. Now, during the acceptance speech of the new president, William Lai, he highlighted the fact that this election was not just a victory for his party, but also a victory over the Chinese Communist Party's attempts to interfere with the country's elections.
台湾人民用行动成功抵御外部势力的介入，因为我们相信自己的总统自己选。
After the event came to a close, we spoke with people who had attended, and almost across the board, every person said something similar. The election for them was a statement that Taiwan has chosen democracy over the CCP's attempts to bring Taiwan under communist rule. What does this victory mean for Taiwan?
So we maintain our democracy and we stand for Taiwan. As a Taiwanese, we very appreciate the President Tsai Ing-wen, the previous all efforts she paid, and we support the government.
This is very important because the democracy, we have to continue the democracy. We all know, mainland China is a threat, right? And the other party always want to unite with them. That's okay if they're a democracy country, right? But if they're not, so it's very important for the policy to be continued. It is extremely important.
What the CCP is doing is against universal value. It's against history. It is on the wrong side. And I think Taiwan people have spoken strongly, clearly, and the world is watching with delight.
To see how the elections in Taiwan work and whether there were any signs of foul play, I visited a couple polling stations on the day of the election. Every vote was on printed paper with an official stamp for each voter. Every vote is called out and documented by election workers, and each vote is presented to poll watchers, including police sitting nearby. There is no early voting, no mail-in ballots, and you have to show up in person in your hometown to cast your vote. Now, the process takes a few hours, and election results are announced the same evening the votes are cast. I was personally impressed by the level of integrity and transparency of the Taiwanese election system. All of this was largely done in defiance of the CCP's threats. Most questions from foreign journalists at press conferences, they focused on threats from the communist regime, which notably claims ownership over all of Taiwan. Just prior to election night, the country's foreign affairs minister held a press conference for the journalists who had arrived in the country from all over the world, and he outlined some of the actions that the Chinese Communist Party was taking.
China has been trying to interfere in our democratic elections all along. Ever since 1996, when we ran for the first direct presidential election in 1996, probably many of you still have the memory. During that election, China was launching an overt military exercises around Taiwan, trying to intimidate the Taiwanese voters to vote in certain direction. And that was just one example. It was the start of the Chinese election interference. This time around, the Chinese objectives remains the same. They want to influence a critical minority, especially in a tight race. And they also have their global objective. Their global objective is that they want to use Taiwan as a test ground. If they are able to successfully shape the results of Taiwan election, they will try to apply their tactics on other countries. In this year, there will be more than 40 free and fair and democratic elections around the world.
While Taiwan is a fairly small country and has a very large footprint on the world, what is happening here will resonate globally. The island nation of just 23 million people is the 9th largest goods trading partner with the United States. Positioned just south of China and north of the Philippines, it also represents a key strategic location, militarily and for global trade. In 2022, about half of the world's global shipping container fleet passed through the Taiwan Strait. And despite being a vibrant democratic nation, Taiwan is being targeted by the Chinese Communist Party for takeover. The CCP is vowing to take Taiwan either through peaceful means or through war. Taiwan's independence from mainland China was a line drawn in the sand by CCP leader Xi Jinping. And the new president, William Lai's stance that Taiwan is an independent country is regarded by the CCP as an act of so-called separatism and an act of war. Now, on the trade front, the country also produces semiconductors, the chips needed to create advanced electronics from smartphones to missiles. In fact, Taiwan produces about 60% of the world's semiconductors and over 90% of the most advanced chips. These chips have also become a point of contention. The United States has placed sanctions on the CCP, limiting the sale of these chips. And the move is crippling the Chinese regime's push for a high-tech economy and notably stifling its ambitions for next-generation weapons. Taken in a broader context, the fact that the island of Taiwan represents a key strategic location with many geographical features that could turn the tides of a military conflict in this region. And all of these factors have made Taiwan a focal point of the world, not only in the long-running controversy of the CCP's ambitions to seize this country, potentially by force, but also in the growing conflict between the CCP, the United States, and the many surrounding countries in the Asia-Pacific region. How important is Taiwan to the West, would you say? You know, if the Chinese Communist Party were to blockade Taiwan or take Taiwan, what impact would that have on the rest of the world?
Actually, there were the economic assessment about the cost of the blockading, not just war on Taiwan, but blockading Taiwan, how that cost to the whole world. And according to one estimate, it's about 1.8 trillion US dollars for just for months. But I would say that that report, a lot of people, including the analysts themselves, believe it's an underestimate. So that we are talking something that's much more. And should the blockade on Taiwan happens, in terms of the global supply on the chip and semiconductors, very soon you're going to see the shortage of those semiconductors, which propel the whole world development today. In Xi Jinping's view, should Taiwan not accepting unification with China, that means Taiwan independence. And he will do everything to crash that. But at the same time that China is losing all the soft power, and the economic attractiveness, so that he had to rely more and more on the coercive hard power. The military definitely is the one that he's using.
It's important for the people in Taiwan to understand, no matter who wins, China still wants to take over Taiwan. If the United States allowed a communist regime to take over this democratic country, the prestige of the United States will be so damaged. Basically, we have to retreat back to Hawaii, okay? Yet, our national strength, our economy, has a lot to do with our trade with Asia. If we lose Taiwan, basically we will lose our influence in Asia. Our closest ally, like Japan, would not be able to depend on the United States for their own security. They might have to take on a different means to protect itself. And other countries like Philippines, Thailand, Singapore might all have to start become more acquiesced to China. And certainly those countries in South China Sea will lose a large part of their EEZ to China, because at that point China is going to say, this is all mine, right? So the impact on the United States and the friends of the United States is so huge that I think it's important for us in the U.S. to understand the entire strategy of U.S. presence in the Asia-Pacific region rests in this little island, resting our ability to make sure this island survives, continue to survive as a democracy, and so that people on Taiwan have the freedom of choice for their own future.
Why does the CCP care so much about taking over Taiwan?
So if you look at from the point of view of the economic part, Taiwan is a fairly wealthy nation. Foreign exchange of Taiwan is the 5th or 4th largest in the world, above Korea, above Australia, just one below Japan. So economically, it's important. And TSMC and the whole semiconductor industry is huge here. It's a large percentage of the budget. So economically, it's important. And also economically, if you control Taiwan, you control the Taiwan Strait. And 70% of all economic shipping industry in the world goes through the Taiwan Strait. So all the Chinese business, all the Japanese, the South Korean, whatever's left of the North Korean business goes through the Taiwan Strait, either going to or from those countries. So economically, it's important. Strategically, it's important because if you own Taiwan, if China were to control Taiwan, then they're not constrained by the first island chain countries. And Taiwan has a particularly interesting geographical feature on the east side of the island. It goes very deep, very quickly in the ocean. So it's ideal to have nuclear-armed submarines, SSBNs, go there and disappear into the ocean. So strategically, if you're a military planner, taking Taiwan has an important strategic aspect that you can hide your submarines very quickly, whereas now they have to go through the Bashi Channel, which is between Taiwan and the Philippines, which is shallow, and so it can be detected. So it makes them vulnerable. And then the political part is, you can't have a democracy, functioning democracy, next to you that's Chinese, because if you believe that the Communist Party is the only solution for Chinese people, then Taiwan represents an ideological threat to their existence, because it means that the Chinese people have a choice. And in order to remove that choice, you have to get rid of Taiwan. It's a bad example because the communists don't like an alternative. They want people to believe that there's only one choice, and that is the communist version of what they have in China.
Now, we spoke with a representative from the main opposition party here as well. That's the Kuomintang, or KMT. Their stance has been on engagement with China, and they've been critical of the DPP's stance on Taiwanese independence, claiming this could drag Taiwan into a war with the Chinese Communist Party. And we found, of course, there are many different opinions on this. I know it's one of the big dividing points between the KMT and the DPP currently, because the DPP is openly saying, we believe in Taiwanese sovereignty. The CCP is saying that's a red line for war, right? So what is the KMT's position on sovereignty?
We believe in the sovereignty of the Republic of China, because when you talk about Taiwan, Taiwan is a common name for the Republic of China, or our political entity here. But the thing is that if we're talking about a country, it has to be the Republic of China, because the Constitution says so, and also our diplomatic allies recognize us as the Republic of China. But I would say that sovereignty is very important. We need to preserve that. But it's not everything, because with sovereignty, you need to find the best way to protect our sovereignty. I think the main difference of interpretation of our sovereignty is that for the DPP government, they are saying that Taiwan is an independent sovereign state, which is not entirely correct, because according to our constitution, Taiwan is just a geographic name. Of course, because you don't have full recognition, you're no longer a member of the United Nations, so it would be hard to ask those countries that do not have formal ties with us to call us Republic of China. So they use Taiwan instead. I mean, we can accept that. But the thing is that if you think there's a Republic of Taiwan and you are protecting the sovereignty of the Republic of Taiwan, then you'll be in a lot of problems. For one, the United States, throughout different administrations, they've been saying that do not support Taiwan independence. So if you are protecting the sovereignty of an independent Republic of Taiwan, you're in the wrong sort of direction, because no, even major countries like the United States or Japan is going to recognize that. So what the KMT is saying is that we want to protect our sovereignty, but our jurisdiction only covers the area under our control.
I'm standing right now on Little Kinmen Island, and right now the fog and air pollution has rolled in, but just about 3 miles that way, right across the water, is the city of Xiamen in mainland China. Along the beaches here are anti-ship landing spikes and machine gun nests left over from the civil war with mainland China. On another beach we went to, we found the remains of a tank that was sunken into the sand. Just over there is Lion Island, a Taiwanese military base that prominently displays Taiwan's flag. And on the other side of the strait in mainland China, we can see giant Chinese characters right on the beach displayed towards Kinmen with the CCP's propaganda slogan declaring ownership of Taiwan, stating, "One country, two systems, a unified China." Now, this part of Taiwan has become a symbol. It was here that a key battle took place in the Chinese Civil War, and the troops of Taiwan were able to beat back the attacking CCP forces. Casings of bullets can still be found on the beaches here, which the locals now melt down into commemorative knives for tourists. In fact, the military bases here would be similar to the Alamo in Texas if a conflict were to happen with mainland China. War is a part of the history here, but at the same time, the islands have a complicated identity. The Kinmen Islands are Taiwanese, but the majority of the locals, they see themselves as having a separate identity. They call themselves Kinmenese. In fact, many people here favor closer ties with China because of economic reasons or even personal ties. A lot of the local economy here and the jobs, they're dependent on Chinese tourism. Locals even regularly take a 30-minute boat ride to go to China to go shopping because it's cheaper there. You can see this in the local politics. The Kinmen Islands, they're a KMT stronghold, and KMT pro-China policies have greatly impacted the islands. In fact, they've even proposed making Kinmen an international zone outside the control of either Taiwan or the CCP. The Kinmen Islands exist in the backdrop of a very present and very visible threat of war between the two countries. And it's a symbol as well of the complex relationship between Taiwan and China. We spoke with some of the locals here to learn more about this.
The delicate geopolitics between Kinmen and Taiwan, as well as mainland China, is somewhat reminiscent of the dynamics between Taiwan, China, and the United States. In fact, border issues like this exist between many countries worldwide. For instance, the China-Vietnam border, the China-India border, and even in Europe, as seen with Russia and Ukraine. Will the CCP initiate another war? Events like the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the Gaza war between Israel and Hamas could provide them with insights to consider. Before initiating any conflict, they would likely weigh the costs and benefits. Of course, Taiwan should focus on being prepared for self-defense, both economically and militarily, to minimize damage in the event of an attack.
I think here, like Kinmenese, like they call themselves Kinmenese instead of Taiwanese or Chinese. They have their own identity, and I don't think they notice that Chinese or China is threatening us, like in the military side of the whole, like as a country. But they think it's important to have business or relationship with China. I think now we are like live in a very peaceful life here in Kinmen. So I think people already take it for granted. So I don't think they know the threat that the Chinese trying to take over.
Basically, in the policies of our DPP, Taiwan is already independent. So there's no need for it to declare independence again. Currently, it's called the Republic of China, and its territory includes Taiwan, Penghu, Kinmen, and Matsu. The majority of our people generally accept this assertion. The DPP can only gain the support of the majority of the people in elections with such a claim. Compared to Taiwan, there are fewer people in Kinmen who support the DPP. The reason for this is its historical background. Because in the past, we were closer to China and had wars with them, people prefer to ensure peace and avoid war. So there are some doubts about the DPP's pro-independence stance.
We're here on Kinmen Island. These are the military tunnels created by the Taiwanese army, then of course the Kuomintang, when they were fighting the civil war against the Chinese Communist Party. Their forces were driven back out of mainland China into the islands of Formosa, Taiwan, and it was here that they fought off the Chinese Communist Party. And these tunnels were some of the underground networks they had where they were fighting this war. Machine gun nests, different layers, different floors of basements and so on, overlooks. It's incredible. And so we're going to go in and have a look. Funny, I would never be able to find my way around here if I was alone. All these slogans here, their ambitions, take back mainland China, was a shame that we got pushed out, destroy this Chinese Communist Party, kill Mao Zedong. These are the slogans written all over here. It's incredible. Another way down the basement. When you talk about the one China policy, we think it means the CCP is claiming ownership over Taiwan. For the CCP, that's the case. But Taiwan, the United States used to recognize Taiwan as free China. Taiwan was the official recognized government over all of China. The Kuomintang was the government in exile. The Kuomintang was very much set on this idea of retaking China, tossing out the Chinese Communist Party, and reestablishing a democratic system or their own system. And it's interesting, these tunnels are the records of that after they were pushed into Taiwan, still fighting the CCP, of course. We can see the tanks and everything on the shores here still. This is a record of what they stood for. Taiwan has abandoned this concept. They no longer have the ambition of retaking China. And so the Chinese Communist Party still has this whole agreement, one China policy, and Taiwan is still in the one China policy. But the other half of that entire narrative, the other half where Taiwan says one China, but Taiwan is the government, that whole side of the narrative is gone now. And so you have a dispute where one side has given up on the dispute, but the narrative is still there. And so the CCP is capitalizing on that and still trying to maintain that narrative and still trying to use it against Taiwan, whereas Taiwan no longer cares about this agenda. They no longer care about trying to retake China and trying to toss out the CCP. They just want to live their lives. But it's interesting to see that this is the deeper concept. This is the deeper context of what the one China policy actually was. The Chinese Communist Party hasn't changed its policy. The Chinese Communist Party's agenda for Taiwan remained almost exactly the same from the time of Mao Zedong.
You want to conquer this island and occupy it is almost impossible. More than 70% of the property, the land of Taiwan, is mountain, and it's not short mountains. We have 268 mountains higher than 2,500 meters. We have 200 mountains higher than 3,000 meters. This place, this island, is a nightmare for every single soldier in the war. And then Taiwan is surrounded by waters. The Taiwan Strait is too shallow. The average depth is only 60 meters. You don't try to do amphibious assault from that kind of water. It's too shallow. it will just stuck you and make very high casualty of the invaders. The east coast of Taiwan, the water is very deep, but the problem is our mountain is tilting to the east. So there is no plan at all in the east coast. So only leaving from the north, Okinawa Trench, and also Kaohsiung Trench, 2 spots for amphibious assault. Taiwan has been prepared ourselves for those 2 spots for decades. So if China dares to invade Taiwan from those 2 spots, I'll be feeling very sorry for them.
Xi Jinping, he has a weird fascination with Mao Zedong, and more so than previous leaders. He seems to be interested in rolling back a lot of the Deng Xiaoping policies and going more towards a Maoist-type China. And part of that agenda, it seems, is proving that he's that type of figure, and seems to be interested in fulfilling one of Mao Zedong's unfulfilled moves, which is, of course, the conquering of Taiwan. Do you see it like that as well?
I study Xi Jinping for a long time, and I believe Xi Jinping is more Mao Zedong than Mao Zedong. Yeah. It is just like Hitler before World War II. Hitler also mentioned he had a dream, same as Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping's China dream, that kind of very ambitious dream that we people living in democracy, we cannot understand. I never heard of any kids from Taiwan saying his dream is to conquer the entire Asia.
The one who determines whether it should be a warfare or not is not Taiwan, it's always China. If they want to invade, there will be a warfare. If they don't want to invade, there will be peace. Everyone wants peace here in China, but it's China's decision, it's not our decision. And if they want to initiate or trigger the warfare, they would use any excuse. So the very excuse, for China is that, Taiwan is posing a threat to us. And the reason why is democracy, right? So the very existence of Taiwan already provoked China. So it doesn't really matter what we're doing here in Kuma Academy or what we say in the political field. Once they want to invade, they could create their own excuse. And everyone here in Taiwan, for them, so you are supporting Taiwanese independence because you're voting. Actually, the voting, the activity of voting to choose your own president is provoking China, right? So it's not the choice between, war and peace. I think it's just an election that to prove that democracy really works here in Taiwan. And the war really determines by China, it's not by us. But there's still a risk over there is because lots of officials from PLA has been fired. And then lots of them believe it's very difficult to invade Taiwan. But once Xi Jinping fired more and more PLA, officials, it means that no one wants to tell him truth, right? They only want to talk about, something Xi Jinping likes. And they may deliver wrongful, messages to Xi, saying that it's a timing to invade Taiwan. That's the risk.
How much of a threat is information warfare from China?
I think still, right now it's the most important strategy that China is applying because they have the 3 warfare tactics, 3 warfare strategy, the legal warfare, psychological warfare, and public opinion warfare. Someone call it media warfare. And I think they got lots of resources for media warfare. So imagine they try to, having some impacts on online influencers. And then one budget for a missile could affect more than 1,000 or even 10,000 online influencers. So why bother about the missiles?
As Taiwan takes a stronger stance against the CCP's claims to the island, the key question is to what degree will the United States support Taiwan, and to what extent would the U.S. help defend Taiwan in the event of a war? One of the biggest areas of confusion on what America's stance on Taiwan is versus the stance of the CCP, because the Taiwan One China principle and One China policy, they sound almost the same in English, but they're fundamentally different from what I understand. What is the difference between the American One China policy and the Chinese Communist Party's One China principle?
U.S. government kept telling us, United States never agree with China claim Taiwan is part of China under the China's One China principle.
This is fundamental because this is the entire narrative. When they talk about the One China policy, the assumption for a lot of people is the United States has a policy to recognize Taiwan as part of China, but you're saying that actually that's not the case.
So this is the reason why we are asking, telling the United States, when China say Taiwan is part of China, United States has to repute positively, assertively of China claim Taiwan is part of China. We are hoping the United States has to make this louder and clear. The United States do not agree with China claim Taiwan is part of China. United States has said to that clearly.
What would you say to the Taiwanese people, given that concern over whether some of them don't believe they could defend Taiwan, and a lot of it is going to rest on the U.S. supporting them?
Yeah, I'll tell you, we have a lot of divisions in Washington, as you well know, but there's one consensus item that is absolutely bipartisan, and that's the support of Taiwan, of its sovereignty, of its independence, of its freedom. And so those who might be concerned about the United States not being there, I think if it's pretty clear that the United States is committed to Taiwan's freedom, to its sovereignty. And I will tell you, for example, if you look at the bill that was passed in the House, the appropriation bills that deals with foreign policy, which I have the privilege of chairing that subcommittee of appropriations, it's the strongest pro-Taiwan bill ever. It actually, for the first time, even has $500 million in financing for weapons. So again, I am not concerned about the support of the United States Congress for Taiwan. It's a bipartisan issue, and so it doesn't surprise me that the Communist Party is going to do everything and anything they can to try to intimidate. But I have great faith in the Taiwanese people. It's a model of democracy and of prosperity because of their democracy and their freedom. So again, it's important that the Taiwanese express their point of view, that they vote for the candidate of their choice. But I think it's important to know that the world is watching, that the United States is supportive, and that these tactics of intimidation by mainland communist China should never stand, should never be accepted.
Taiwan is moving into an unknown future. It has taken a new step in defiance of the Chinese Communist Party in a time when CCP leader Xi Jinping is trying to revive the Maoist regime, and as the United States and its allies are taking tougher stances against the CCP. And now as the trade wars and the military threats grow more severe globally with the CCP, Taiwan has become a focal point of the world.